Welcome to Kusa Cast, where we interview some of the most influential people in tourism from around the world. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another season of Kusa Cast. I'm your host, Graeme Watson, and today our guest is David Frost, the CEO of SATSA. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing really well, Graeme. It's a treat to be chatting with you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I served on the board of your board of SATSA for many years. That's how we got to know each other quite well. And I've always wanted to get you on the show just to get your feedback as to the current state of tourism in the country, in South Africa in particular, and the challenges that we faced over the last few years, how we've overcome them, looking forward to the future, what needs to change. I'm sure we'll spend a lot on that topic. And just in general, your feelings and all the great work that yourself and SATSA do. So just for the benefit of the listeners, if we can just run through a bit of your background and how you came to be in your current role.
Well, look, let me try and do the sort of horse racing commentary version of that rather than the turgid one. I mean, we could be here drinking a single malt in the evening if I really get going. But I trained as an economist in the mid-80s, University of Cape Town. I went to work for the trade union movement after that as an economist, and ended up in the food side of things. Was the economist at the Food and Allied Workers Union, interacted a lot with the big milling and baking companies prior to 1994 to democracy, and did a lot of work in terms of reorganizing and realigning the agro-food sector, which had been dominated under apartheid by farming interests. So did a lot of work in that space and set up structures and played a leadership role at quite a young age in that space. And then I was asked by the largest of the milling and baking groups, the Premier Group, which was an industrial conglomerate, a bit like Bidvest is today, to come and be their group economist. So I joined them actually auspiciously in May 1994. I turned 30 in the same month, and the country changed. So it was a move from the left to working for a big corporate, and it was an interesting 5 years. Did some really good work, I think, in the Premier Group. Sat on the board of a couple of their big companies, but ended up working for an interesting man called Doug Band, who was the chairman at the time, and he oversaw in 1998 the unbundling of Premier. It was actually bought by the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. John bought Premier, and it was unbundled. But Doug was the mover and shaker, and he was the single man in amidst the business leadership in a structure called the Business Trust that was set up to make an extraordinary effort after apartheid. So they raised R1 billion of after-tax money, mainly through large corporate companies that had no interest in tourism whatsoever, but their remit was education and job creation. And Doug was the guy who said, if you want to create jobs, tourism is where you need to invest. And at that stage, nobody, particularly from a government point of view, had even mentioned tourism. Yeah. An young ANC government's priorities were health, education, sanitation, things like that. So there was nothing much going on. We had a dysfunctional DMO called SATSA. We had a national department that had 6 people in it. And I was seconded for my sins by the Business Trust to be the special advisor to Paolo Jordan. And my job was make tourism happen. So in 3 months, after negotiating with industry leaders and senior figures, managed to pull together, and I was the chief architect behind that of a strategy that had at its apex a public-private partnership. And there's a lot of parroting that goes on about that, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But we set up a proper structured partnership in SA, what is now SA Tourism, 5 government folk and 5 private sector guys formed something called the SATSA Marketing Partnership Committee, and we oversaw this massive injection from the business trust. 180 million rand went in. It also catalyzed what today is TOMSA and the TBCSA, because the tourism guys hadn't contributed. It was the big mining and fishing and food guys that had put the big bucks in. So they got off their bums and set up TOMSA, which is alive and well and funds the TBCSA today. So it was an interesting period. I spent a year in that space, and then I joined Tourvest initially as the sales and marketing director of the inbound division, and after 6 weeks I took over as CEO and managed that for 2 years, and that was an interesting time. Really pulled together what today is known as TDM, and many of the good folk who work in that space worked for me. And in fact, people who have gone on to do other amazing things were part of that Tourvest collective, and I was privileged to lead them and indeed learn from them, because they taught me, I think, a lot more than I was able to share with them. I then left when Imperial took over Tourvest, and I set up a strategy consulting operation that worked for some sort of big tourism companies, notably Thompson's, amongst others, and then also did destination strategies. The most fulfilling and interesting was a country strategy for Namibia and the mid-noughties, which I was privileged enough to be contracted to execute and to make happen, and spent 3 years doing that. And that was massively successful, with a budget 1/20th of the South African budget at the time. We totally outperformed South Africa and really put Namibia on the map. And I continued to do some work for provinces, other parts of South and East Africa, and then in 2013 I'd sort of exhausted everything. I think the only country I hadn't done a strategy for was Lesotho, which, no disrespect, just sounded a little uninteresting. And then the SATSA job came up, and I thought, this will be gardening leave. I can just chill out and have a quiet time. And as I joined, our friend Malusi Kagaba introduced the unabridged birth certificates, and so I've spent 10 years essentially crusading against impositions from government in the way of tourism competitiveness, but at the same time took over SATSA, and it's been an incredibly fulfilling 10 years, where it wasn't in a great shape to start with, but just by doing a couple of simple things consistently, and I think well, and also with integrity, we've taken SATSA into a new space, and I've been privileged to be able to pull some good people along in terms of the team that I lead, which is small, tight, but very, very committed and very effective. And then, and thank you for your time. And I mean, very privileged to have had over the years and continue to have a really dynamic, engaged, and wonderful board, and various chairmen. I mean, they actually all have been men, I must say, chairmen who have sort of been able to sort of guide and advise me over the last 10 years. So that, in a nutshell, Graeme, is
David Frost's CV. Well, thanks very much. An illustrious one at that. Yeah. So I mean, thanks for running through all of that. And just in terms of SATSA, I mean, I believe it's a great organization to be a part of. There's so many moving parts, not just in terms of networking and who you meet at all the different functions, and but what would I mean, just one or like a minute sort of sales pitch, what would you say to anybody that says, well, what would be the benefit of my organization joining SATSA?
Our historical USP has been around credibility, the fact that we, on an annual basis, check people's credentials in terms of their financial viability and their compliance with insurance levels, etc. So it was initially around that. But beyond that, you become part of the inbound family, and we're a good sort. We're a good collective. We're an egalitarian collective. So the big guys don't throw their weight around. People help each other. That was certainly evident through the COVID period, where we I think provided a space and a base for people to rally around.
Yeah.
But very importantly is the marketing opportunities that flow from that. So the collaboration and the connection is strong. We take up issues that bedevil the industry at various levels that individual companies find very difficult to deal with and to resolve themselves. And then we take on the big challenges, the unabridged birth certificates, the visa regime, the red list, issues, like that. And it's useful to have an association that is able to do that on behalf of members. So in a nutshell, to me, it's a no-brainer. You join SATSA, it's. I mean, there's a spa ad back here where they say it's good for you. So.
Yeah. So the value for money, I think, for a sole trader, I think you're looking at it's about 400 Rand a month, or it's really 100 Rand a week to get the benefit of being roughly, I don't want people to tell me I've got my calculations wrong, but it is roughly 100 Rand a week. So for me, I can see the benefit. Obviously, my UK based company, the repping company Kusa Connect, is now a SATSA member too. So it's not just open to local South African companies. You do have the ability for international companies that sell inbound into South Africa to become a member. So I really hope that international community can grow for you as well, because I certainly see the benefit. And I'm hoping to come out for the August conference if the flight prices from the UK weren't as high as they are in August, with it being school holidays. But it's certainly something I'd love to attend. I've always seen the value and even been on panels at the conference before. So it certainly is a great place to connect and network. And that's what I find most beneficial about the membership, is the networking and being able to meet and work with like-minded companies that you can trust. As you say, the credibility's already been taken care of because you guys have done the due diligence already. So it's a stamp of approval that I seek, and I'm glad to have been given myself. So lovely to be a part of the family as my own company now, having been on the board for so long. This might make you think a bit. Unless it's an easy question, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced, or the tourism industry have faced, that you have been fighting for, apart from COVID, of course, in the last 10 years?
Well, the two that I would single out, Graeme, the first was the unabridged birth certificates, which was the most ill thought through, absurd piece of legislation. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And it was perpetrated on absolute lies, on just absolute nonsense. The Director General of Home Affairs stood up in Parliament and said 30,000 children are trafficked out of South Africa every year. There are fortunately a number of really astute bodies that do fact checking on a variety of issues. And obviously one of the things we did, the correct figure was 3 in the previous 3 years, and they were all across land borders. They were not trafficked out of airports. So, when that was, when we were faced with this, initially you just can't believe it. You sort of think this is an April Fool's story.
Because to me, what is a piece of paper that can so easily be forged, by criminal elements, are going to prove anyway, and
it was
a piece of paper
ridiculous.
in a foreign language and a foreign alphabet, and so I never understood.
And I mean, we were the only country in the world, getting involved. So I mean, that required a particular, challenge, and one had to be savvy, because what was apparent early on was Kigabo wasn't going to back down. It wasn't going to be, oh yeah, you're right. I am being an idiot. It was sort of, okay, I am being an idiot, but I'm digging in.
Yes.
I'm going to dig in my idiot trench, and we're going to fight you. And fortunately, we had a incredibly supportive minister in Minister Hanekom. But, I've worked very well with Derek and known him for many years. We connected in 1992 when I was a trade unionist and he was the ANC's agricultural sort of head in that period, and then he became Minister of Agriculture. So, I'd worked well, and he's a sober and intelligent person. But he said, I can't be the only one, standing up to this. I need support, and we went into bat as SATSA, and I'm one of the things that I'm still a little aggrieved at is that we didn't get the requisite support from the umbrella body above us, the Tourism Business Council. Part of the problem with the TBCSA is that it blends associations so that I come in representing 1,400 members, but individual corporates can buy their way on. And when you get corporates that are doing a lot of business with government, their appetite for strident critique is a lot less than an egalitarian association that is standing up for all its members. So, notwithstanding that, that challenge went on for a number of years. But I mean, one can talk about it intuitively and it doesn't make sense, and we talk about being nonsense. The fact of the matter, for the first time ever, we saw a dip in numbers. In 2015, we saw a 5% decline in our overall tourism numbers, directly attributable to the unabridged birth certificate.
And horrific scenes at international airports of families being turned away for their flights. And all that tourism spend being lost and a resultant job losses. So, yeah. Has it, I mean, for people who still, it's 100% not required anymore. That is correct. For foreign.
Absolutely. That was, we got this taken away just before COVID. There was a new Minister of Home Affairs, and basically at the stroke of a pen, it was in 2019, late 2019, that requirement was removed for foreigners coming into South Africa. It's still a requirement for South Africans traveling out of South Africa, which is still, to my mind, overkill. But for foreigners coming in, it certainly isn't. But just bear in mind, if you have minor children traveling alone, or then you need just go and check the fine print, because you do need letters of consent, you do need copies of certificates, etc. So that's where it comes in. And then Graeme, you asked that. I mean, the second biggest one will probably even larger than that was during COVID, and that was when the UK put us on the red list.
I remember.
Which was in retrospect, and we all know this now, and there've been quite public inquiries in the UK that a lot of what we were dealing with was pernicious, was unscientific, and it bordered on being colonial and to an element racist. And so that was a very interesting lobbying effort. I mean, it's one thing lobbying in South Africa and dealing with government here, but to go onto the big stage and actually be in the cut and thrust of politics in the House of Commons and the House of Lords was a totally new experience. But it was one that we, as SATSA, spearheaded. Once again, the TBCSA chose not to support us in that, which I have disagreed with. But as SATSA, I went and raised 1.5 million. We had an excellent team of consultants, the team of strategy and communication specialists that were at Graeme Mackay's side as he took South African breweries from a brewer in number 2 Jan Smuts Avenue, Joburg, to be the second biggest brewer in the world. And they were very astute. They knew what they were doing, and they said it would take 5 months. And in 5 months, we rallied forces within South Africa. We engaged directly with senior government people in the UK, and we got the whole thing rescinded in what was ultimately a sort of farcical climb down
Yeah.
by the UK authorities.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my niece was actually in the air flying from the UK to South Africa and had to turn around in Dubai because, we were put on the red list with immediately. And of course, as we know from the past, when we were on the red list, people had to pay £2,500 and quarantine themselves for 2 weeks coming back from South Africa. And I think we all knew that it was mainly because our scientists were good enough to have discovered these strains that were all over the world anyway. And it just was our scientists discovered them. And then it was, yeah. Anyway, a lot of post-traumatic stress, I think, for a lot of people talking about those days and COVID. I think certainly for me sometimes when things are going very well, I'm almost waiting for the for something to happen like it was during COVID when we were taken off the red list and bookings came flooding back in, and then all of a sudden on the red list again, and it just felt like every time we were sort of drowning and we came up for air, somebody would push us back down again. That's what it felt like. And I think there are a lot of people that are, just, it's still quite raw, I think. It has been 4 years, but I think there is still a lot of raw, business owners out there who went through a hell of a lot. And, and you guys were there through it all as a helping hand. So thanks for that. I'm hopefully getting Minister De Lille on in a few days or a couple of weeks after the election has calmed down. How is it going with Minister De Lille, and what are the challenges that you still want to sit down with her, talk about, and solve?
Well, look, let me just say she's been amazing. I mean, she's been one of the most proactive and can-do ministers that we've had. She is no nonsense. She gets to grips with the issues. She is particular about being well informed, so that you can't just raise an issue. She said she asks exacting questions, and basically requires you to come to the table with a well analyzed proposition that breaks the problem into its constituent parts and then posits a solution. So she's been to my mind really good. She to her credit has appointed an excellent special advisor in Margie Whitehouse, who has an impeccable track record, ex-CMO of South African tourism, and then went and ran Saudi tourism, which is the biggest tourism budget entity the world's ever seen.
I heard like a few billion dollars.
So she has worked well in terms of sorting out SA tourism, which ended up being an incredibly dysfunctional and let me just use the word questionable entity in the wake of the Spurs deal. And board that had been assembled, and then good people on the board who were marginalized and who ultimately did the right thing and resigned when things got gnarly and non-transparent. So there was a deep need to sort that organization out. So she's busied herself together with the former chair Tim Harris of doing that. There's now she set up a new board. It's a particularly dynamic board. We have a new CEO in Nombulelo Guliwe, who is a former CFO of the organization. So she understands it financially, but she also gets it. So to my mind, that they've appointed some very astute senior people into senior positions. So in terms of that organization, that is moving in the right direction. And then one of the other positives is under Minister De Lille and the previous board, we were able to finally get agreement around a proper structured engagement with South African tourism. So this is a partnership that gets forged between the Tourism Business Council and SAT. But at an operational level, we set up specific task teams in our 6 key geographical source markets. So that's UK and Ireland, North America, German-speaking Europe, India, China, and mainland Africa. To start with, it's not exhaustive and it may well grow. We've also identified special interest segments around golf as a special interest sort of case study. First look into that thing, adventure tourism, and the youth side of things. We also are setting up an entity similar to that to look at gastronomy and how we play on the food and wine space. So this is really bringing, and this happens at a technical level underneath the TBCSA. So the members of these task teams are SATSA members, SATSA member companies. There's 6 members of each task team, and they sit down then with the counterparts at SA Tourism, and their job is really to look into their particular areas of operation and to come up with essentially what are joint game plans in those particular markets. And once we've done that, the idea is that would then be widely communicated so that everybody is on side in terms of what the game plan looks like for the next 2 years in those particular areas. Historically, we haven't worked together, and SA Tourism doesn't consult and doesn't engage the private sector. And there is an ignorance, just as simple as that, from a private sector point of view, about what SA Tourism's game plans and activity are, tend to be. So some people tend to chance upon these, but in terms of a private sector perspective, people plan at least 2 years in advance, and they budget accordingly. But in the absence of knowing where to align and where to partner, everybody tends to just plow their own furrow, and that's actually been our malaise, if you will, as South Africa. Is we've got a great product, there's high awareness out there, but we don't hunt as a pack. We don't do things well collectively. This is something that the Aussies do in an exemplary fashion, and they have seen the benefits of that. So these are the sort of good things that have come to the fore under Minister de Lille. We've had challenges, and the big one that remains for us, there are 2, is the vehicle licensing permitting issue. And I mean, to me, it's just ridiculous in a fully functional middle income democracy that we can't license tourism vehicles efficiently. We are up against obdurate civil servants who are bloody minded and have taken, and I don't understand this. There's just an anti-business view. We continue to bat in that space. It's not easy for our members, but it's something that we continue to do. Now, obviously, with the elections and everything coming up, and we've got them tomorrow, in the run-up and at least for a while afterwards, there's a hiatus on being able to engage in anything constructively with government. They sort of go into
so there'll be presumably a lot of shuffling
paralysis.
Indeed,
indeed. And then the other main issue, Gray, is the issue of visas. Now, it obviously doesn't apply to visa-exempt countries. So, 77% of our international arrivals come from North America and Europe, and they are visa-exempt areas. So, but the 2 fastest growing outbound markets in the world in the last 10 years are India and China, and we require both of those countries to get visas. But our ability through Home Affairs to process visas timeously and efficiently is appalling. And we have seen our performance in those markets is shocking. I mean, I can share numbers with you, but we reached our zenith out of China in 2013. We got 151,000 arrivals. And in 2023, we got 37,000 arrivals. We've gone backwards. Out of
over
China.
1 billion people, so India and China collectively have about 2.5 billion people population, and you saying that we're getting only tens of thousands out of that 2.5 billion coming to visit South
Well,
Africa.
just compare it to
Yeah,
Australia. Look, I mean, Australia is closer, has cultural ties. But, as I said, our zenith was 151,000. And that was in 2013. In 2013, the Aussies were getting 700,000. By 2019, they doubled that. They went to 1.4 million. Now, we don't have the capacity to absorb numbers like that, nor do I think we want them. But clearly, we should at least have gone from 151 to 200 to 250. That would be a reasonable figure to look at and expect. And there's been a similar abysmal performance out of India, where we've also peaked around 2013 at 112,000, and we've gone backwards to around 90,000 now. And it's squarely at the door of Home Affairs. And once again, they are just obdurate in refusing any sort of constructive engagement with the tourism sector. Everything happens behind closed doors. They come up with stuff like this new e-visa system, which is firstly not applicable in China because it's around individual visa applications, and the bulk of our travel out of China is groups. It's just user unfriendly. The system is unstable, and you contrast this to competitor countries on mainland Africa, like Kenya, that have gone visa free, and you can get visa on arrival from any destination. So, we really are sort of up against it. So, in terms of the visa side of things and the vehicle permitting, still two major challenges. And let's just see how the political bones fall post the election. That would inform where we end up in those spaces.
but what's the solution to the visa? I mean, is it just as simple as a software, or I mean, visas aren't necessarily manually processed. I don't think anywhere in the world is. The US, for example, their ESTA system, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that someone actually sits there processing millions of applications, and then you get your response within 48 hours. I mean,
So I think the first thing that we would suggest is sit down with us.
yes.
Come and talk to us as the tourism.
So Home Affairs, the Minister of Home Affairs.
Home Affairs, Home Affairs. Come in, because the funny thing is, I mean, we can just sort of go to what would success look like. Well,
that's what
how will we know if we've got an efficient visa system? The funny thing is, we, the tourism industry, will tell you. We'll tell you if it's working, because you'll see it in the numbers. So the first thing is to sit with us. The second thing is to look at international best practice. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there are a number of intermediate steps that we could look at. And one of them is where travelers from India and China have a valid Schengen, US or UK visa.
Yep.
Those countries have done our work for us. So just let them in. And there are examples where this has been put into practice between Mexico and the US.
Yes. I went to Montenegro.
There've also been offers from Australia to come and share information with us. And Home Affairs has refused that those sort of overtures. So there are a number of things. And then let's just go and see what the Kenyans do. And funnily enough, when it befits the our current government, when it's in their narrow interests. So under the former President Zuma, who we all know had a close affinity to Russia, in March 2017, at the stroke of a pen, he took away the requirements for Russians to get visas. And in 3 years, in 2.5 years, the numbers from Russia to South Africa doubled. But you ask yourself, on what basis is that decision taken? Are Russians just nicer people? Really? Russians are nicer than Indians? Is there some test they do? I don't know. But there are certainly a variety of things. And you just look at the long haul leader in Tourism Australia. I mean, they have a very rigorous visa regime, but it's user friendly. So, for example, if you're applying from China to go to Australia, you can apply in Mandarin. It's your, I always say, imagine if you as a South African or wanted to take a holiday and you go home and your missus says we going on holiday in 2 months' time, and you say, well, that's great. Where we go? And we're going to Bulgaria. Oh, amazing! I never thought of Bulgaria. Skiing, there's lovely things to do. She said, it's a bit of a problem. We've got to get a visa. And you think, well, that's no problem. I've got visas. We've got to apply in Bulgaria.
Yeah, crazy.
Imagine how many people are going to stampede to Bulgaria on that basis.
And fly hours to the embassy and at a cost. Yeah. Because I think that was the China problem, is it? Because they were in the main centers, and sometimes it would take hours. China's a huge country, so you would be spending 6 hours or something on a flight just to go and apply for a visa and fly back. No, has, to your knowledge, the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Home Affairs ever sat in the same room with the President and discussed anything?
Well, she's doggedly tried, and there have been some engagements. We've also tried to, through Kusa and the TVC, we've had engagements with the Office of the Presidency, but there just doesn't appear to be the sort of level. The office you would imagine appealing to the highest office of the land would carry some gravitas, and there would be a whip that could get cracked. But this is evidently not the just sort of not the case. So that and this is the trouble with the way our government operates is things. The private sector is not seen as an ally. It's not seen as an entity where you partner with and you look at moving forward. And 2 months ago there was the president speaking to the Cape Town Press Club was quoted as saying, we have our civil servants who just seem to be stuck in their old way of doing things. But I mean, you're the boss. I mean, imagine running a company and saying, I've just got useless employees that just can't do their jobs. Woe is me. I'm just the CEO. What can I do? I mean, it just speaks volumes to the lack of political will and the lack of the political capability to, when clear issues are identified, to immediately go and address them with some sense of purpose, because there are jobs and economic growth at stake. It just doesn't, that penny and that process for us, we don't see it, but we don't give up. We continue to engage. We press for engagements. We put stuff out there. We've tried being strident. There's been a lot of work done behind the scenes. Some people believe you've got to have more gentle engagements, but when the vehicle thing, we've been at it for 7 years and you've got nowhere and you are simply lied to. It's incredibly difficult to keep one's equanimity and to keep the begging bowl out and saying, please, wise person, can you help me? Can we sort this out?
Yeah.
The sort of tendency to become, just a little incredulous is it becomes difficult not to go there.
Yeah, so I mean, for those listening that aren't aware of the NPTR issues, it's basically the licensing of tourism vehicles is required for all tourism vehicles. However, it's taking way too long to get a license, sometimes forcing companies, small business owners, SMMEs, to not be able to legally carry tourists around because they're waiting for their license and there's no explanation as to why the license is taking so long. How does the Department of Transport then work with the Department of Tourism to solve these issues?
I think we should talk about more positive stuff, because I mean it is it is what it is. And I must say we haven't had great support from our Department of Tourism. So we have great ministerial support, but the actual Department of Tourism, people go to work every day. Your job should be to unblock the blockages to tourism. And this issue with transport's been there for 7 years. and we go round and round in circles. We end up, and we've seen the evidence from themselves, emails from the department actually saying that they're not even dealing with the 2023 or 24 applications. They're still busy with 2019 to 2022. But publicly, they come out and say they've cleared the backlog. But we know it's not cleared because we've got over 100 members still waiting for applications to be processed. And there's a legal requirement in terms of the Act that gives them time periods that they can't adhere to. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, so the golden egg, we like visa. I've just seen Namibia's taken a decision to now require visas for non-reciprocal countries. That would be a backward step for South Africa. I think we did try that with New Zealand, and that didn't last too long. Countries that require South African citizens to have visas, we can't really afford to have a reciprocal relationship on that basis, because that means the UK and the US would all need to get visas to come here, in which case would make us extremely uncompetitive in the tourism market. So, I just hope the Namibians have thought long and hard about what's going to happen there in terms of, booking numbers, because they are looking at countries. I read the list of like the United Kingdom and places like that. So it just, do you ever get the feeling that like sometimes it's just going backward, or is there a general positivity thought that we'll get there and things are moving forward, maybe slower than you would like, but generally in the right direction?
Look, I think and you made a number of points there. So let me first say that the decision by Namibia to do this is, I think, the most absurd, disingenuous, and quite frankly stupid decision I've ever seen in the tourism space. I mean, it makes unabridged birth certificates look sort of vaguely sensible. A third of the arrivals to Namibia are from Germany, and they want to tell Germans to go and apply for visas now. I mean, the only thing I can say is that it will benefit South Africa. We'll get a little bit of that thing, but it is a disingenuous, introspective, backward approach to being competitive as a country. The reason that we are required to get visas as South Africa into key markets, and bear in mind we didn't used to. We were visa free into the UK, is because we have a porous system in which dodgy people can obtain and enter and move into markets. So these decisions are not taken lightly by governments, but they're taken for sort of good reason. And you also got to think: do we need them, or do they need us? And let me tell you, we need their tourism a lot more than they need arrivals.
Well, it's just,
from the southern tip of Africa. But
I think it's, even in life, you just have to understand that sometimes you're going to need someone more than they need you, and you just got to eat that humble pie, and take it for what it is.
But then, just moving forward to your other thing is, do I think there's progress? Yeah, look, I mean, we have, let's just focus. I mean, because the be all and end all is not always government. I mean, they're an enabler, and in some ways, they can be an obstacle provider. But we have an incredibly robust sector that's come through a difficult period in terms of COVID. We have an amazing destination, and I mean, that's something that I think we don't lose sight of, but that it tends to become sort of clouded in some of the debates that we get into. So we are, to put it in a nutshell, what is our challenge, and what are the opportunities? Our challenge is that we have high awareness but low conversion, and that is driven by perceptual issues around safety, around issues to do in that particular space. The reality is that when people come to South Africa, bar a couple of isolated incidents, most people do not experience crime at all. They experience a very friendly and amazing experience in terms of human interaction. So the staff, we're a friendly destination. The third thing that is gobsmacking is the infrastructure is a lot more first world and seamless than most people expect. And by far, the another positive factor is the value for money is just blows people away, because when you're buying a holiday and you're sitting in Guildford or Vancouver or in Delhi, what you're buying is an airfare and accommodation bundle. You don't buy your meals. You don't prepay meals. So when you're sitting at that restaurant in Cape Town or in Joburg or in Durban, and the bill comes and there's 6 of you, and you think it's just for yourself, but it's actually for the table of 6.
Yes.
And they're absolutely.
And you see what it comes to on your foreign credit card.
Blown away. Yeah. And our cheap car rental is actually one of the other sort of areas where we are massively competitive. So what this then translates into is we're almost world champions in repeater rates, because once people have been here and seen how cool it is and essentially how easy it is, and then how cheap it is, and how safe it is, it's a no-brainer. So then we sort of lock people back in. So what are we seeing in terms of numbers? So I know you play predominantly in the UK market, but let's look at overall. The overall inbound international arrivals for 2023 for the calendar year compared to 2019 are at 80%. We've seen a strong growth out of the US market, so which is predominantly a more top end market. Okay, so we play in the 5-star space there. We don't really play in the mid market in the US. I think it's a massive opportunity. The Aussies do it really well, and they have almost 3 times the numbers we do. So there's an opportunity, but the US numbers have been really robust. But then let's just put a caveat there that a lot of the US is, I think, double counted, because a lot of US people don't just simply do a South African holiday. They do a lot of Botswana and Namibia, a bit of Zim. You fly in on the Delta. The Delta plane lands at 4 PM, and if you're going through to Botswana, you will clear customs overnight in the airport, fly to Bots, and then when you fly in to do your Cape Town leg, you are counted twice. So I think that there's work to be done statistically to really unpack that, so we get an accurate picture. But the US markets are almost back. It's at 95, 98% of the 2019 figures. The UK is only at 80%. Germany was at 75%. France is only at 70%. And a lot of this speaks to the price of airfares, which I think is a mitigating factor in terms of the mid-market, that solid Brit mid-market that we used to really get. It was really sort of robust. But then if we move a bit forward and we look at the first quarter of 2024 compared to the first quarter of 2019, there is an increase. The UK is at 90% in 2024 first quarter compared to 2019 first quarter. So we are getting there. And I mean, there have been challenges. And I think one of the principal challenges is within the UK market itself. And I think that, and it's replicated in the German, and I think to an extent in the French markets as well, where during COVID, we lost a lot of people because the industry was shut down and people needed to make ends meet. So they went and sought alternative jobs and employment. And we all know that South Africa is not a stay put destination. It's not a flight and flopping into one hotel. It's a complex multi-destination touring destination. And in order to sell that, you need knowledge and expertise of the market. And I think a lot of that has been denuded. And, it's not as easy in terms of, bringing things back. I think another factor that has limited us, and I think is something that we need to think about quite carefully collectively, is air access. So, in terms of the number of carriers flying in, we sort of, back to pre-COVID levels, but there's a big problem. We've essentially lost our national carrier, so that capacity is out. But there's a lot of stuff coming through the Gulf, and I mean, those legacy airlines out of the Gulf have always been, great providers and friends. But there's a big issue around availability of A380 pilots, and they used to fly. A lot of those airlines flew A380s. They just don't have pilots, so they parked 380s. They're all flying 777s, and that just takes massive amounts of seats per flight and per day and per week out of the market. So that's a little bit of a break on our ability to get back to where we were. Then I think if you have a look at the impact in country, I think that Cape Town has bounced back tremendously. So we are ahead of our pre-COVID levels in Cape Town, and top-end lodges around Kruger doing exceptionally well. But the other parts of the country are really not seeing it, Graeme. And I mean, it's concerning. Yeah. So I think in the wake of COVID, what we've seen is an increased sort of skewing of geographical spread to our main nodes, and the more secondary areas are as I say, just not seeing those volumes in the way that they used to.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest dream one of the biggest dreams to come true for me was that direct London Durban flight, obviously being based in Durban, and I used to use it often, and it was full. And hopefully now, with the increase in the all-inclusive resorts that are coming to KZN, Blue Marlin's doing an all-inclusive package now. The Club Med's broken ground on Club Med. So yeah, let's hope that the access will increase, because that flight was actually doing well from what I saw whenever I was on it, before COVID. So I do think, air access is important. I know Westgrow and the great team there are doing a great job in terms of that. Monica was the first guest. Monica Yule was my first guest on the podcast. So the guys at Westgrow are, forging ahead. And, so, I mean, and just from people who assume that it's expensive to fly to South Africa, my flight now, when I came from London to Cape Town for World Travel Market, Africa, and then I flew out of Durban after Indaba, was £599, which, is not a lot of money at all, in terms of the distance that you're traveling. So, I think that there are cheap enough flights, and I think that's the way to go. So, David, it's been nearly an hour, so I thank you so much for your time, and all the great work that you do. Some of the things that you do and take on are very brave, and it's you say things that I think a lot of people are thinking, but are too shy to say. So you are the mouthpiece for a lot of obviously, being in your position, there's controversy at times, but I don't think, having known you for 10 years or whatever it is, that there's anything you do that's not with the focus of increasing revenue and business and livelihoods and quality of life for the members of SATSA and tourism in general, and also creating jobs in general for the tourism industry. There's nothing that I've ever heard you say or do that to me isn't the heart of it is job creation and quality of life for your members, who obviously their businesses are going to do better and things like that. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time today. You've referenced the TBSA and Shafiwe, so I will be talking to him next week, and hopefully the minister, and then let's see how we, after the elections tomorrow, move forward, and see the tourism back. And I think we need to get to a point now where we don't talk about, pre-2019 levels. I'd like to see a point where we start talking about, 2023, 2024 and comparing it to year-on-year growth rather than focusing still on the pre-COVID. I think we all need to move past that dreadful time. So thank you again. And we look forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. And I will hopefully see you around soon.
Well, Graeme, absolute privilege and treat. And cheers to all your viewers.
Thanks, David. We'll chat soon.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into Kusa Cast, where we explore the world of tourism with leaders from all corners of the globe. Join me, Graeme Watson, for future episodes as we dive into the latest trends and insights from the industry. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating, and we'll see you next time on Kusa Cast.